4, we're learning about how supply and demand interact with one another. And of course, the big idea here is that these determine price. They determine how much of something is sold, and they interact together in a way that can be predicted, that can be analyzed, that can be studied, and that can make starting a business a lot less risky than it has to be if we play it smart. We'll see today are surplus, shortage, equilibrium price, price ceiling, price floor, as well as minimum wage. So the first question, do you think an economy would work if everything cost the same price? So if you were paid in widgets, that's the economic term. So if you're paid in a widget, that is, you get one widget per day. And if everything in the world just cost one widget, would that even be feasible? So let's think about this. So how do prices work in a free market? Since we're a free market, that means supply and demand work together to establish prices. For example, if there's a surplus, that is a situation in which quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. It's also a situation in which a government spends less than it collects in revenue. So if there's a lot of something, the law of supply and demand indicates that the price is too high. Ergo, the price needs to be lowered. None of you want to buy my stapler for $10. I have a glut of supply, a surplus. Common sense would dictate I need to lower my price to meet the demand, which we found out that the demand is basically I would have to pay you to take a stapler. So there you go. The price meets the demand. But also, if there's a shortage is a situation in which quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. This means that I've priced my product too low. If I said, who wants to buy my stapler, and you all raised your hand, I have 3 staplers, I have 10 customers. Well, that's good for me. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, $10. Your hands are still up. Just like an auction, I'm going to say $15. Your hands are still up. The price is going to continue to grow until I've reached equilibrium, until I've set a number and there's 3 hands. And in a perfect market, that's how it works. That's called equilibrium price, when there's a perfect balance between the supply and the demand. It's theoretical. I mean, you don't always find the perfect equilibrium price. But if you do, man, you're making money. You see, equilibrium price is the price at which the amount producers are willing to supply is equal to the amount consumers are willing to buy. If you've ever worked for a private business and your shelves are empty at the end of the day, it's a satisfying feeling. You know, when I worked for a rafting company and all of the boats were rented out for the day, even though my income wasn't based off their profit margins, even as a lowly hourly employee, it was still satisfying to see that we have reached a market equilibrium. The price we were charging was fair, ergo the demand was high, and we were at maximum capacity. Sometimes renting these out 2 or 3 times in a day, sometimes sending 600 to 800 people down the river in a day. And it was neat to be a part of an efficient operation that I knew was making money. It was job security for me. The boss was also really nice to us when he made lots of money, so I enjoyed seeing their business thrive when the price was at an equilibrium. Now, it stays. So if it costs $30 to rent a kayak for the day and take it down the river, assuming that the demand remains consistent, there's no need for that price to change. But if the demand goes down, well, they've got to start lowering the price. But what we found over time was the demand steadily grew. Ergo, we could begin to experiment with charging a little more just to see what happened. Now, there is a degree, even in a free market, of government control over prices. If there is an unfair balance between supply and demand, the government may establish a price ceiling. A price ceiling is a maximum price that can be charged for goods and services, and this is set by the government. For example, when there is a fuel shortage, gas companies want to start charging outrageous prices because they know that people will pay it. So if there's a shortage, there's going to be a line at the gas station. Well, you notice also during those shortages that gas stations don't just start charging $10 a gallon, because the scary thing is people would pay it. Because they got to drive their cars, they got to get to work, they got to go places. And so in those times of crisis, our government will establish a price ceiling. But also there can be an opposite crisis where a price floor is necessary. A price floor is where the government establishes a minimum price that can be charged for goods and services. So an example of this, let's say that demand for an essential product is at an all-time low. Think of agricultural goods. During the Great Depression, demand for agricultural products hit an all-time low. In fact, 400,000 farmers lost their homes because they couldn't sell their crops, they couldn't pay their bills. 400,000 farmers lost their homes as a result. One attempt to combat this was the price floor, where they established a minimum price that farmers could charge for their product, and that was to help them stay in business. One practical example of a price floor that you guys have experience with is minimum wage. Minimum wage is the lowest legal wage that can be paid to most. Now that's the key, most. As you know, restaurant employees that make tips can legally be paid far less than the minimum wage. But for most workers not earning tips, minimum wage is the law of the land, which is a great example of a price floor. Now, should the government control prices? Should price floors and price ceilings be established on all products? It's a matter of opinion. Prices as signals. Even to the consumer, prices can be signals that can help you make good decisions. If you are a business, well, what do you want to make? You want to go into business? Great. The idea of business is to make money, hopefully doing something you enjoy. But what are you going to make? Well, you can think about what you want. So let's think about what you want. Let's say you love bikes. Okay, you want to make bikes. Well, what kind of bikes are you going to make? Well, you should be somewhat influenced. If you're a good business person, you'll be influenced by price. What types of bikes are selling for lots of money? Which ones have the highest profit margins? Where am I going to make the most money selling bikes? It's also going to determine how you produce it. So if you want to manufacture the bikes or you want to retail the bikes, how are you going to do it? Well, price affects that. If you're selling an item with a thin profit margin, you're dealing with high quantities so that you can keep your money flowing in. Now, if you're dealing with luxury items, that's also going to deal with how you produce it and who your market is. That is, for whom are you going to produce it? And so prices are signals. So what advantages do prices have? Well, number one, they're neutral. You've heard the old saying, it's not personal, it's just business. You're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings when you buy one water bottle over another. Let's say you walk into the store and you see the hydro flask and you're like, hey, that looks really cool, but it's $40. Really, $40 for a water bottle? Are you kidding me? No, you're going to pick out the cheaper one. Are you worried you're going to hurt Hydro Flask's poor feelings? No, hadn't even entered your mind. Sure, they're a neat company. Sure, they do cool things to the environment, but $40 for a water bottle? And I'm not considering their feelings. I mean, really. They're neutral. They're also flexible. Now, here's the thing. Somebody is out there paying $40 for a Hydro Flask. Good for them. There are other things I pay lots of money for, just not for water bottles. There are things that you pay lots of money for. Maybe they are water bottles, maybe they're not. But those prices are flexible. You see, the price system is able to absorb shocks, that is, sudden changes. If no one bought those bottles, they can lower the price and eventually someone will. It also allows freedom of choice, and this is an essential part of our country's system. If you want to buy fair trade coffee, and if that makes you feel better, knock yourself out. If you want to buy the cheap stuff made by slaves, buy the cheap stuff made by slaves. Now, of course, by slaves, I'm saying that these coffee grounds may be made in countries that don't pay their workers a living wage. That's your choice. Or if you prefer to go with the fair trade route and buy coffee that comes from places that pay their workers a living and sustainable wage. I mean, that's up to you. It's freedom of choice. You can choose to buy products purely based on price. You don't have to consider price if you don't want to. You are free to buy what you want. And this is the opposite of a command economy. A command economy means that instead of, hey, where do you want to go eat tonight? No, it's, we're going to eat at this place because we have to eat at this place because that's the only place that we can go eat. But also prices are familiar. You know what it costs to get the products that you love. You're aware of those prices. You know the going rate of your favorite thing. It's not a secret, nor should it be. Are there advantages to the lack of choice? One of our favorite restaurants in Brevard, it's called Magpie's. I'm a fan anyway. One of the neat things about their menu is there aren't many items on it. So instead of some restaurants, we go to El Chapala at least once a week, and their menu's like pages and pages and pages because there can be lots of combinations of the same ingredients, and so there's a complex menu. But if you go to Magpie, well, there's about 4 to 5 options when it comes to entrees. There's maybe 10 different options when it comes to sides, and that's it. So limiting choice can also be a way to run a business, but there might be advantages to that in a command economy, but once again, that's a matter of opinion.